sales is like an orange, like it's the fruit inside, right? And then admin work, firing, even client delivery are like the bitter rind, and you got to peel those off so that the owner peels those activities away and keeps the fruit.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey there. Welcome to the New Rules with Alan Pentz, where we help you navigate today's chaos with precision. Your host, Alan Pentz, has 25 years of experience working in business and government, and he knows how the old rules have fallen apart. Each episode, we'll explore how to thrive in this new landscape by mastering the new rules while everyone else is still figuring them out. Let's dive in.
All right, welcome back to the Small Business Black Holes podcast from the Owner Institute. I am Alan Pentz, coming to you from sunny downtown Bethesda, Maryland, with the lovely Tonya Berenson. All right, what are we talking about today?
Well, you wrote a little bit last week, or was it this week already? I liked you were talking about stop lying to yourself about your business. A good way to hook people in, right? And you were talking about sales.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I asked Claude what a gripping headline that people would have to read was, and they said, stop lying to yourself about your business.
Like, but that's how I get up in the morning.
That's right. So, yeah, so the point of that was it's sort of, like we were just talking about, the owner independence journey that is sort of core to Owner Institute that I just started. Mm-hmm. And the theory is that from my experience in my own company and then coaching people over the last 5-6 years, was watching how companies change over time. And so then within that, the role of the owner, the systems in the company, the people, the team, everything really shifts. So there's no like one truth. I guess there is one truth. Cash flow is king, right? But besides that,
that doesn't change.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I would say the full is from Alan Pentz, which is revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. So we should always remember that. That's a universal truth. That's like the Nicene Creed.
Did everybody take notes? Write it down.
Yes, exactly. So beyond that, though, everything else changes over time. So one of the things I wanted to emphasize in that piece was, really a company below 5 million in revenue. Now, again, I always caveat, this does not involve venture-backed companies.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of venture funding is to short-circuit the owner's journey that I'm talking about. You're getting money up front to pay for resources you can't afford at that level of business. So it's a totally different
game.
It's a different game you're playing, right? Mm-hmm. And so as a result, you set your company up to have to 10, 20 times in a short period of time to make up for the fact that you got to short circuit the owner's journey. So if you can do that, it's great, but very few people can. So mostly they fail. So it's like this trade-off, right? And so I'm not saying it's bad or good or whatever. It's just what it is. So for a regular bootstrap kind of Main Street business, when you're below 5 million, the real key to the company is sales, right? And the only person that can really sell effectively in the end, and sometimes it's marketing too, right? So like for our product company, it can be the person who's really good at figuring out how to place and promote the product. So it can be marketing or sales in a way. Mm-hmm. But whatever that key piece of gold is, right, that gets people to buy, that's what almost always the owner is the person that has that. It's why they probably started the business. And how they were able to survive and get above 1 million is the fact that they could sell something. And I see a lot of people come in when they get to 1 or 2 million, or they're frustrated, they're not growing, and they want to go hire a sales guy or gal, right? And I'm always like, warning sign, right? Because you have no processes, right? I mean, I'm sure most companies at 25 million barely have processes, but at below 5, they have none. And nor should they have that many, to be honest. And we'll talk about that next. But for you to get someone to come in from outside, figure out how to package your product or service, sell it effectively, better than you, without any process or other support in place, that is a pretty exceptional person. Now, I always say that person exists. And that person makes $2 million a year and works at Oracle in sales.
Well, that was going to be my question. I was going to interrupt to say, you probably can't afford that person at this stage in your business, right?
Exactly.
Especially for what is still most likely an unknown product or service at this point.
Right. So I really say, like, in the owner's journey that I'm building out, and we'll have a cool diagnostic and assessment you can take on the website and get where you are on it. But like, you start out, I call it like bootstrapping, that first few, million to 2 million. And then you kind of move into this hustling phase where you're like selling. And then you got to get into this phase where you get a bunch of work and you've got to stabilize the company because you took in all this new work that you can't service yourself because now you're above 2-3 million. But during that phase, the real key is the owner is the person producing for the company. And like I said before, like, you don't have the processes in place really for anyone else to come in to follow, in any processes really, but in sales in particular. And I don't think you should at that point, because really when the company is that small, the owner, if you're successful, right? The owner, if you're, you get to $1 million, a couple of million, you sold stuff, you delivered it, right? You've shown that there's product.
Good at what you do.
Right. You show that there's product or service market fit, right? And you are involved in everything at that point. And to some extent, you're learning, if you're a first-time entrepreneur, how to do stuff. You're figuring it out, but you're there to put your stamp on everything. So at that point, process isn't really all that important. The point of processes is to first embed the owner's knowledge into the organization. So how would the owner approach XYZ, right? Onboarding an employee, bringing a new client in, selling a new client, right? How do we get the owner's special sauce? I hate that term, but okay. Way of doing things, right? So that others can replicate 85% of it, right? That's what a process is for. Then eventually processes are for, hey, the owner started this company and, sold several $1 million, right? But like, they might not know how to manage an HR department at $5, $10, $15 million. So like, then processes move into industry standard, best practices, those kind of things. And that's really important later on down, usually embedded in software, right? But the key is the owner's special sauce is the thing that needs to get documented eventually. But there's no point in documenting it when you're so small that the owner's involved in everything is touching it all.
What I hear when you talk about the processes are for scale.
That's right. Right. So like, once the owner can't be involved in everything, then the special things the owner does need to be embedded in processes. And then as the company scales, it needs to follow best practices for legal compliance reasons, but also like they're best practices because they work and they provide organization. So like, my call is not to overburden companies with lots of process early on. I think that's just not effective, nor are owners probably particularly good at following processes. So they're going to set them up and then fail to follow their own processes. Right. So they're really to be there when they're not there. That's the real first key to the process. So I say, this is part of my owner's journey kind of thing, is like, at that early stage, it is absolutely critical that the owner is marketing or selling right? But then like, there comes a point in the company where its value is hurt by that, right? So like later on, I'll take my example, right? Like, I was really good at selling clients, right? And then we got to say 7, 8 million on the way to 10. And I had no idea how to structure a sales department, right? Like, I was a good salesperson. I'd been a consultant. I sold what I did, right? But the companies that I've worked at, I was never the guy who was managing overall sales across multiple departments, right? So like, I promoted all these people to be the salesperson to kind of do what I did, which is like, be able to talk to clients and figure out what the problem is, figure out a solution. But I had no idea how to run like a system that would be able to do that across multiple accounts, look at new work versus existing work, figure, organize the CRM and step-by-step what you need to do. Like, I had never done that. So like, I was hiring people to do something they had less experience than I did. I was hiring them to do something I didn't know how to do myself.
So was
So I
that like
called them.
taking a step back in a way? Because
Yes,
the
100%.
whole context of this too is you're talking about moving towards owner's independence, right?
Right.
Well, this is
But
all
on that,
stages.
right. And as a good example of this in the sales department, sales example, as you go up, the problem is you don't just go up linearly and like get better each time. You actually take steps back. So as you grow, like you're going to kind of take a step back as the owner needs to transition to non-founder led sales, right? Sales is probably going to break for a little while until you figure out what the next step is, right? So for me, it was like I promoted all these people. We sat around 7 to 11, 12 million for 3-4 years while I was trying to figure this out. And eventually ended up having to fire all those people, or they left knowing that that was coming. And I felt terrible, right? Like I was I called getting that job being Darth Vader's admiral. You know, it was a great job while you had it, but it wasn't going to last very long. Yeah. So
Nobody wants that job.
nobody wants that job,
Nobody
right?
wants that.
That's right. So then finally I hired a more experienced person from another company that had managed like an account in a bigger organization and wanted to run the whole organization, a smaller company. And that worked out really well. And then we grew really fast. So, I guess the point being, this sort of like a very good illustration of what the owner's journey does is like at each stage, the owner's got to realize that their role changes. And it's the fact that they can't figure that out, either don't know what to do, don't want to do it, don't want to make some of the decisions that requires. So sometimes that means, hey, my role changed from being the salesperson to making sure that all the people on the leadership team are good at their jobs, right? And a lot of owners don't want to do that because that means supervising people, holding them accountable, definitely firing
don't like
people
to
and
manage.
replacing them.
A lot of people
Right. And they don't want to,
don't
I'm
wanna
a sales
manage.
guy. I don't want to be dealing with like whether the HR person is doing his or her job well,
Yeah.
And so that becomes the next barrier, right? Like until you figure that out, your company's not going to grow. Because I'll tell you, once we crossed 20 to 25, HR became the most important, recruiting and HR became the most important function in the company. And, and then it toggles back and forth between different departments as you go, right? So there's just no way I think most owners just think, hey, if I just keep selling, keep doing what I'm going to do, I will grow the company and I'll get to like where everybody else I see in my industry gets to. And I'm here to tell you that there's a great line from a guy, Brent Beshore, who's a PE guy, he wrote an article called The Ceiling of Brute Force. And basically his point is owners can hustle and sell. They're amazing, right? That's why I love working with owners. They're amazing people. But their ability to lie to themselves about what's happening is high. And so, there's somewhere in that $5 to $10 million range for most companies where the owner just like the whole, like, I'm going to hustle. I'm not going to pay attention to process. I'm not going to bring in the best people. I'm not going to go from working in to on the business, all that kind of stuff. It breaks down. And that's the ceiling of brute force. It's like you can brute force it to a certain point, but then it's going to be a freaking mess all around you and it's going to break down. And
Ellen, you're like white knuckling it to a certain.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And very few of us are Elon Musk or some other, Steve Jobs who can like will our way through it, right? Some people can. I'm sure there's exceptions, but like the reality is even those guys took steps back. Steve Jobs got fired until he could go, get better people around him to help him elevate the company to the next level. So like, I do think that owners, this is the tragedy is you come in and you see the owners at the ceiling of brute force. And to be honest, they have like companies that look good from outside. They're making money, they're doing well, but the owners just like die because they're doing everything, right? And that's the symbol that you are overplaying the hand that got you there. So like what got you here won't get you there kind of thing. And that's sort of the big lesson. I think sales is a great example of the big lesson in the owner's journey is how you have to change that over time.
An Owner's Institute is going to help.
Owner's Institute.
Help.
We're I've set up sort of like a picture of the journey that I see up to, from really just bootstrapping, starting to kind of owner autonomy over time. What I'm saying is, I call it independence, actually, owner independence rather than autonomy. Because I do think that owners can choose what they want their role to be, but those choices are constrained by the level they're at, right? So there are different versions. Like when you start a company, you're everything. So, you don't have any independence, right? But as you get some revenue, you can start shedding. And I don't know if we used the orange metaphor last week, but like I said,
that aligned. Yes. Talk about
right.
that.
So the sales is like, at that stage, sales is like an orange, like it's the fruit inside, right? And then admin work, firing, even client delivery are like the bitter rind, and you got to peel those off so that the owner peels those activities away and keeps the fruit, right? So the whole goal of the program is that, like, early on, autonomy or independence really doesn't mean, hey, I'm going to turn the keys over to somebody and go play golf or go to the beach or spa or whatever. It means I'm going to peel off those bitter rights, right? So I can get to just what I'm really good at. Mm-hmm. And then that changes over time. And so then, as you grow toward 5 million, an owner can really get, like, you can be making really good money once you stabilize there after you get that grow through crisis phase. If you can stabilize there, you can do really well. As an owner, you could be making good money in a $5 million company. So you get it up to 15, 20% profit, maybe a little more for some exceptional businesses. And, that's making $1 million a year or more. And, you can get your time down probably to 75%, doing 30 to 35 hours a week if you want to, working on the things that, you're still going to be this main salesperson at that point. So you're going to have to do that kind of stuff, but you can get rid of most of the other stuff. And what I say, and one of the points of the owner's journey is like, that's a really good place to be. And if you want to stay there, right? But if you really want to go and I want to be 10 million, well, you're not going to keep that 30, 35 hour work week. You're going to go back down on owner independence, and you're going to be working more, and you're going to be more essential to the business as you're building processes and transitioning owner-led sales. And then eventually, you're transitioning that to like a new sales team and with a new process, right?
And these are all stages, right? These are particular stages that an owner might not know that they're in.
Right. And sort of the point is like you can go up and hit periods of stability where it's really good. And then I want owners to be conscious that the next stage is not going to be like that if they want to keep going, right? It's going to get chaotic again. You're going to have to reinvest so profitability goes down, and your role is going to transform, right? Mm-hmm. And I say it's like I have 3 rows to the owner's journey of different levels. And it's sort of like, in a way, when I started doing it, I realized, stage 1 is working in the business. Stage 2 is figuring out how to work on the business. And stage 3 is about figuring out how to work above the business. And that's actually a new term that I kind of came up with is, back, I think there's a really famous entrepreneurial book called The E-Myth Revisited. And it's a story, it's a terribly written book, but it has a good message. But it's a story about this woman who's a baker and she loves baking. So she starts a bakery and then hates her life, right? Because all she's doing is invoicing and baking. Dealing with customer complaints. She's actually not baking that much, right?
She's not even baking. That was her.
And it's like a job. So she took a hobby that she loved and turned it into a job and hated it, right? And so his point is teaching her how to systematize the business over time and realizing that now you're a business owner, not a baker, right? You're a business owner that happens to own a bakery, not a baker who owns a business, right? And she figures out her new stage. And in that book, a lot of his message is you got to go from working in the business all the time as working at the bakery counter to on it where you're structuring the baking system, right? And so I'm trying to add a little bit of refinement to that, where I'm saying, look, in the beginning, you have to work in the business. There isn't any business to work on yet, right?
There's
so
no way around.
So you're bootstrapping, you're hustling, Then there's that, but people get trapped there, right? Because once you start doing something, you just keep doing it. Because that's what, inertia sets in. And so there does come this point where you need to make the transition to working on the business. And that means, hey, I'm structuring the processes. I'm making sure the team is the right team. And I'm making sure they have, that they stay the right people and they grow their team under them and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's working on the business. And then eventually I think there is this category of above the business where, I put it at, say, 10 plus million. At some point, it's not right at 10, but probably a little bit after that, the owner starts really looking up and out at the industry, the market, right? So what are the trends in the market? So some of that leads to innovation, right? Like we need to incorporate AI this way or whatever it is, right? Or M&A, right? I'm seeing other players in the market, and for us to get strengthened in the market, we need to, join up with others. So they start M&A. They might look at valuations in the market, say, hey, I feel like valuations are at a point where they're kind of peaking. So maybe I need to sell this business, right? Or, hey, this business is doing great. I think there's a huge amount of growth. So I'm going to keep going, right? So that to me is the in and above. And I think that's like a new thing that we haven't really talked about before. And it's really key for, I think, owners to understand. And like, to me, once you're working above the business, now you're in the phase of owner independence that I call autonomy. But that doesn't mean you have to leave. To me, it's like autonomy in the sense of like, you have the choice of autonomy. Okay. So like you could leave the business altogether as I've set up my business. I'm not setting up a board. I'm not the CEO anymore. So I'm setting up governance and things like that. So I've really gone full autonomy, right? I mean, I guess full autonomy is you sell the business, you have nothing to do with it, right? But as close to that as possible.
Right.
But there are versions of autonomy where it's like, hey, I'm just working big market initiatives or big innovation initiatives or M&A or, those are levels of independence those are all, to me, the same level of independence. It's a choice what you want to do with it.
It's the owner's choice, right? That's
the owner's choice, right? But before that, in the 2 stages before that, you really don't have that choice. You're doing a little bit of that, right? You're always thinking about the market and M&A, but that's not primarily how you're seeing things. You can even tell the people who are in the business so much, they just can't look at the market objectively, right? But then once you kind of worked on the business and you're proud of what you got there, you can then look above and see your business in context of the rest of the market. And I think that's a really significant point for owners. So that's one of the big goals. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Nice. That's very nice.
What do you think? I think that's good for today.
I mean, yeah, I think we've kept it tight this time.
That's right. Keep it tight.
Keep it tight.
That's right. Well, have a good weekend and lovely San Cugat.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, until next week.
All right. Survive. Keep surviving.
That's right. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The New Rules with Alan Pentz. For more insights on mastering the new game, follow @apentz, that's APENTZ, on X, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, in today's world, you don't follow the rules, you write them.